Today we have the 2021 Made in China Rhoads Pro RR24 in blue Crackle. Earlier this year I was pretty concerned about these guitars being made in China, and I kind of addressed some of them, but I thought I need to actually just review this thing and get it in hand and spend my own money on it to actually give it a full review. We have the Simonunka JB in the bridge and the Jazz in the neck. Great pair. Very big fan of these pickups. Just a three-way selection and no coil splitting. So it's going to be pretty straightforward to check out the sounds. A Floyd Rose 1000. That's about it. We're going to check out both pickups in all three settings in cleans, leads, and rhythms. Alright, now to check out some leads with all three settings on the pickups. Luckily, this bar is actually stable. The one that I saw previously at a store was just clanky. It wasn't assembled properly. I'd say my only gripe on it so far, though, is it tends to get loose pretty quickly on just the collar. All right, now to check out these 3 pickups and cleans. So I guess maybe I'll start with the positives and then end with the negatives. Some people aren't going to like this, and some people are. But when I first started playing this thing and just feeling the neck, playing a few things on it, this neck reminds me of the USA model. And since it has a nice clear coat, I've talked about it in previous videos that I've noticed that these new 2021 Chinese models have good clear coat. In my opinion, it doesn't feel sticky. It actually feels close to my Japan Rhoads. This guitar right here is a Japan Rhoads, made in the early 2000s, and I'm a huge fan of the clear coat that they were using back then when they were making guitars in Japan. It feels very comfortable, and this clear coat on the new 2021 Rhoads feels pretty similar to the Japan model, and that's why I'm actually more impressed with these. They're both pro models. So the nice thing is this thing does sound good. It has a JB and a Jazz, and the setup has been great, like the way they leveled the frets and stuff, but there is an issue that I'll get into in a moment. So I ended up putting Ernie Ball Beefy Slinky strings on this guitar to play in D standard, so the guitar doesn't really flutter anymore just because it's got that heavy bottom, so the balance is all over the place. So this bar just really wants to go down and up, which I understand. So for me, the biggest selling point is this neck. The neck, for real, reminds me of a USA Rhoads or a USA King V. It has that very thin shape, maybe D shape, and it's flat. It's a very flat shape. It's that Jackson neck. Even with all that clear coat and paint on it, like, it's a thin neck, and I really like it. It's very comfortable to me. I like that kind of spec, personally. I'm glad this is a Rhoads that has 24 frets, too. That's the whole point. That's in the name. It's the RR24. But definitely a fan of it. And luckily, this particular one doesn't really want to neck dive as much, so I like it for that, too. But that could vary with every model. guess I'll start with the cons now. So, at the beginning of this year, these things came out and they were $13.99, which is pretty expensive for a pro model made in China. And every manufacturer just raised the prices a month or two ago as of this video. So everything went up, including this. Any brand, you name it, like all their stuff went up. So now this thing is $14.99. Doesn't include a gig bag, doesn't include a case. I'll put up some photos, but there's numerous models that have got damaged tips arriving to the shops just from shipping. So I imagine that some people are also going to receive some damaged items. I'm shocked that this one didn't get damaged when I received it, but that was Sweetwater, and they triple boxed this guitar. They knew that this was going to be an issue. It's definitely an ebony fretboard, so that's really cool. But here's the thing that I've noticed with guitars over the last 10 years from Jackson is the perloid that they're using is a little bit cheaper material than the perloid that they were putting on the Japan guitars not that long ago, but yeah, 10 years ago. So there's that. That's different. I'm not a big fan of the binding still. It does the job, but I don't like the material that they're using. They used to use like it looks like a multiply binding, but the Jackson custom shop calls it Ivoroid. So they'd use Ivoroid on the headstock and neck, and they do it on the Japan models. They haven't done that since when they were making guitars in Japan 10 years ago. So I miss that material. I think that would be really cool if they put that back on the guitars, but I don't see that happening. The problem with this material is it will crack if the person owning the guitar doesn't condition the fretboard as many times as it's supposed to be. It's usually about 2 times a year you should condition your fretboard. So if you're not doing that, you're going to see your binding crack. Likely. I've seen at least 4 Jackson guitars made in Indonesia that have had cracked binding where the frets meet because there's fret sprout. The fretboard's shrinking. But when I set this up, I definitely conditioned the fretboard. So the frets were done well. Like, I wasn't getting cut. They seem rolled off pretty well and fairly level. Like, I wasn't really getting any buzz. But there is one spot that is just straight up dead. And I've tried to refrain from playing on it. So I'll be playing. Yeah, a filthy noise. I'm holding the 15th fret on the high E string, and it doesn't want to play. It's just going to play the 16th fret. Yeah, it's a disgusting noise. I'm not... Yeah, that's definitely a knock on this guitar. However, manufacturers have had a lot of odd QC issues over the last year and a half when the pandemic was going on. So this could be the tail end of it. I don't know, but I have to call this out. That's ridiculous. And it slipped by the 55-point inspection for Sweetwater. My critique on that behalf was they had this guitar at such a high action, like ridiculously high, especially for a shredding guitar. This should have been lowered and then tested, because yeah, that's unplayable. Even when I bend the B string, it'll fret out. So it's just that little speck of the frets over here. Everything else is working great. Things slip by people. I'm reasonable. It just, that sucks. I have to call that out because that's a fret that's unplayable at the moment. And I don't know if it's something that I'd rather just return the whole guitar for, or maybe it's an easy fix. But sometimes something like that could take a whole fret level, but not all the time. Jackson really likes to put Floyd Roses on almost all their guitars. I'm particularly sick of it. I don't need a bar on every guitar. Like, they're cool, but I noticed I have a lot more fun playing the hardtail Rhoads that I have because the body is angled a little different instead of just flat. So when I'm palm muting and playing rhythm, especially, I like having my wrist a little bit higher from the body. And I don't get that when I'm playing this guitar because it's a lot more flat. I was definitely feeling it compared to playing my other Rhoads. That is a personal preference. Some people may not notice. That is me though, because I like playing on hardtail guitars, especially for a V, an Explorer, it's single cut. I like Strats with bars though, so I have no problem. In fact, I prefer having a bar on a Strat shape. I'm getting a little tired seeing a Floyd Rose on pretty much every Jackson made, especially every high-end Jackson. Like, they should experiment with Evertune, if they ever get to, but at least the hardtail would be nice. So I'd call this a con, is this thing is now $1,500, and it doesn't come with a gig bag or a case. This is a sharp guitar that is susceptible to breaking during shipping, and this thing should come with a case. This is one of those things where you're going to have to make that decision, is if that's worth it to you. And I have a feeling that these aren't selling well, but I don't know. Maybe they're doing well. I see photos of people owning some, and there's a few videos of some people that bought one. Now I'm one too. But I wanted to review this thing and have it in hand instead of just expressing my concerns of just seeing it at a store. And I can't always buy everything. So I just at least trying something sometimes and just getting an initial impression kind of helps. But obviously it also helps owning an instrument, paying with your own money, and seeing if this was worth it or not. Luckily I bought it from a company that has a return policy, or even just assistance. They're going to contact me about this fret. So I don't know what's going to happen, but that's just a thing that I can't let slide. So something I thought was interesting was the fact that the entire back has been finished, even in the cavity. And I want to point out a missed opportunity, and this is a common thing with just the Jacksons in general, that they don't do the recessed Dunlop strap locks. I have them on my Mustangs and they're great. It makes this strap button flush, and it's on both sides normally on the Dave Mustaine guitars, but Jackson tends to have this outer button, and maybe it's on purpose. That way if you don't have the strap locks, you can just use a regular strap on it. So there's a little bit of give and take there. So they've been using it for a while. It's probably on purpose, but it would make this a lot more comfortable if it was the recessed ones, especially since this is done in the factory. But it's just a preference, so I don't know if that's a hit or not. And to me, it looks like this fret wire is lower than the rest of the frets, and that's why I'm getting that buzzing, because this fret wire is too low. So looks like that whole fret wire would have to be replaced. Those cons were, this thing's $1,500 now, with no case, no gig bag. The binding that's probably never going to change. That fret that's off, like it's unplayable. And that's really the biggest cons on this. Granted, sure, this thing's manufactured in China. Take that as you will. What I've noticed though is that the Chinese built guitars feel better and seem to be built better than the Indonesia guitars for the last 10 years that Jackson's been making. That's my opinion, and that's what I'm feeling. They have a better clear coat in China. The way they're buffing it and the material that they're using, it almost feels like the Japan model. That's the only reason why I even considering picking one of these up. And I learned that from owning the Marty Friedman Pro Purple Crackle. That's an excellent guitar. It's actually a guitar that's sometimes hard for me to put down. So I thought, okay, if I really like the Marty Friedman, this is probably not going to be bad either. So I gave it a shot. Again, though, this is $1,500. You have to really want this guitar if you have the money. The problem is with that too is there's a lot of competition, even just in Jackson's catalog. So I could see some people passing this guitar to get something else, even if it's from another brand. This is getting up there. The thing is, mid-tier guitars that are pretty high-end are getting expensive anyway. So you're going to see more guitars in that $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 range anyway. So take that in mind too. I like this thing. I'm having fun with it, but I don't think I'd want this to be my only guitar. If it was, and I just didn't have the proper income and this is all I could get, I bet I'd be ecstatic with it. I'm trying to critique this thing the best way I can because there are some concerns with it. But I will say, if you just absolutely like this guitar and have to have it, I don't think you're going to be disappointed as long as you're happy with the instrument. Like, I'm happy with the neck profile and the way the neck feels. That's almost the most crucial part to me. My only knock on it is that fret that doesn't want to play. But everything else plays great. So I would say if you're interested in a pro model from Jackson made in China, I'd say at least try one out. They feel pretty good. And I'm impressed with that. There could be a negative to the one that you get though. Or there might not be. Like the Marty Friedman, I'd say is essentially perfect. It's so well built that like I had nothing really negative to say about it. So I'd say rest assured the Chinese models are pretty nice. In fact, I like them more than the Indonesia Jacksons that they've been making for the last 10 years. But if that price is too much and there's other gear that you're more interested in, maybe it's a good thing to pass on this too.